Liberals are on the attack against Pierre Poilievre. The Olympic uniforms in Canada, which seem kind of like they're a joke because they look awful. Geoengineering confirmed by the BBC, yes. Bandage on Trump's ear. Yeah, yesterday I said that there was no bandage on his ear. I guess it looks better now. And no, there was a bandage on his ear. I just mistook it. I thought it was a hair curl because it was kind of, I don't know, it curls along. But there was a bandage there, so he's still healing up from, the assassination attempt, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we're going to talk about that as well. Cheadle was testifying yesterday, and there's all sorts of people calling for her resignation, but she's fully protected. It would be like getting Dr. Tam's resignation, right? Like fully protected. Getting Jagmeet Singh's resignation, very difficult, right? It's not going to happen. I also have, what else do I have? Water update in Calgary. Guess what, everybody? There's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. Calgary's water. What's going to happen? Exactly what we thought was going to happen. Petrified COVID parent is responding to this Global News headline. Global News says, Calgary's outdoor water restrictions to remain until further notice. No questions. Thank you. No questions. Petrified COVID parent says, boy, those 2 weeks to flatten the water crisis sure seem to be dragging on. Right. I'm sure that it is absolutely above board that these water restrictions are never ending and no end in sight. And don't ask questions, you bigot. So yikes, right? And like bamboozled again. We've been bamboozled again. Why are we allowing people who aren't looking out for our best interests to run things? It seems like that's happening at every single level of the Canadian government right now. Holly Doan says, Canadian, this is a grab bag of governance to start us off. I figured we've been doing a lot of American news, but I've got the middle of the show is all American news. So we've been doing a lot of it, but we got to move it around. Canadian news is important as well. Anyway, Holly Doan reports, Canadian charter rights to a speedy trial applies in traffic court. A justice of the peace rules. Charge of red light running against a driver in Oakville was dismissed after prosecutors waited too long to bring the case to court. Oh, shucks, right? So why are Tamara and the Coots guys who were tortured in remand custody by being placed in remand custody for extended periods of time? Remand's not, like, that kind of jailing is not built for long-term housing, right? As far as I understand it. So there's all sorts of questions that I have. Do we have a right to a speedy trial? If we do, and it seems like some people do, how come Tamara Litch and Chris Barber and the Coots guys aren't? How come they're not, right? Like, that seems really, really weird. So questions. I have questions, but I always have questions. Sheila Gunn-Reid says, we've got the documents. Toronto police only acted to end the disruptive anti-Semitic pogrom on Avenue Road and the 401 after seeking permission from Justin Trudeau. So that's interesting. I think that this lends more fuel to the fire of, I think these are sanctioned events. These are things that the government supports. The government supports this stuff monetarily through funding NGOs, and the NGOs in a roundabout way fund these things directly. So the government has their hands clean, and the NGOs just, they're like pop-up shops. They're like Swiss bank accounts, right? If the branding on one goes south or sours, you just shut it down. All the funding dries up. No harm, no foul. It was just taxpayer money anyway. And you open up a new one, new funding appears. Done. No problems whatsoever, right? So it's very, very, all of these things seem like coordinated, seem like they're allowed to continue. And that's very notable, right? And Rebel says they have the documents. You can check that out. Link is in the description if you're interested. The Olympic outfits look awful, absolutely awful. Ryan says, no, this isn't a scene from Dexter. These are what the Canadian Olympians are being made to wear during the France Olympics. Yikes. And the France Olympics are starting this week. So I remember the Olympics, the British Olympics, where they had the big, scary wizard thing and all of the kids jumping on the medical beds and the nurses from the NHS bringing the kids in and all that. Remember, it was super duper creepy. So I'm expecting something to happen with the Olympics. I'm expecting something surrounding the Olympics. What was 28 days later? Wasn't that an Olympic event as well? And then it went bad, like the outbreak started during the Olympics and like the world kind of changed and right? Wasn't that part of that whole thing? Regardless, I think be on the lookout, because I feel like a terrorist event, you need something in order to get change, you need chaos. In order to get chaos, you need lots and lots of attention, right? So if something, quote, big happens at the Olympics, then all the eyes of the world is watching, if you will be on the Olympics, and they'll all see this big event, right? And I mean, right now, what's going on with Trump and the assassination attempt and the Biden coup, Biden leaving office, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, no proof of life, so on and so forth. All of that is happening and the world is watching that. But that's still not as big an event as the Olympics, if something were to go south, let's just say. And it is a big event. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. GM Forbes says apparently this is the closing ceremony gear. Not even kidding. Awful. It doesn't look very good. It looks very bad. I wouldn't wear this if somebody made me. And Canadian Olympic gear is absolute shite. The maple leaf looks like a marijuana leaf. Yep. And I like marijuana, but it shouldn't be our national. It shouldn't be the look we're going for, right? It shouldn't be our national representation. Kirk says terrorist Quarish Zachary is proudly showing off his Canadian passport that he used to fly to Israel with in a stabbing attempt. This is the kind of trash we are immigrating into Canada and breeding here. This is what happens when we let radicalization networks freely operate here and import people with overwhelming support for terrorism. Today they fly out of Canada to commit terrorism. Tomorrow they will be committing it here. I think that's already happening. We're just not being informed of the things that are happening because our news media is purchased by the government. So what happened? This guy flew out of Canada, attempted to attack an Israeli guard outside of the Palestinian border, and he was promptly shot. I think he was shot in the head. No, maybe not. But they shot him and they killed him. And they were like, "Who is this guy?" And they said, "He's a Canadian." And so we're radicalizing people to that level, and they're flying to Israel to confront guards on the Gaza border. And ill thought out. This is what's your plan exactly, bud? Senator Housakis is asking about this. He says, "I'm curious as to who funded his trip to Israel. Was he acting alone? Had he taken part in any of the pro-Hamas rallies in Canada since October? Was he known to police?" Mayor Jeremy Levi, who is the mayor of, I don't know where he's the mayor of, Hampstead, he says the importation of malevolent ideologies in Canada under Justin Trudeau's administration is already a grave concern. However, an even more alarming development is the apparent exportation of such animosity beyond our borders. Recently, this Canadian citizen was implicated in a violent confrontation with an IDF soldier. Tragically, this confrontation ended in the Canadian's death, a fatal consequence of his aggressive actions. Despite the gravity of these events, Prime Minister Trudeau remains conspicuously silent. This raises critical questions about our national identity and the international ramifications of our domestic policies. Sure does, right? Like, that's not great. And the Prime Minister not saying anything about this? Weird. Very, very strange. I didn't see this video. I didn't know that post offices were an instrumental part of the gun buyback program that the Liberals are spending money on but not actually executing well on. And Bob Zimmer says, here's what's going on. Here we go.
Everybody, it's Member of Parliament Bob Zimmer in front of my local Canada Post office here in Fort St. John. Some of you may have seen the video that I did recently about the new Ordering Council. This is put out by the federal government recently as of May 9th, 2024. What it does, it attempts to force Canada Post and other couriers to be part of the Liberal gun confiscation program. It specifically permits a person to deliver the specified firearm or device, to transport the specified firearm or device, or to possess the firearm or specified device for the purpose of confiscating that particular firearm. We know Canada Post already has said they don't believe it's safe, they don't want to be a part of this program, yet again, Justin Trudeau and the NDP Liberals want to force Canada Post to be part of the gun confiscation program. Do you agree? Hey everybody, it's Member of Parliament Bob Zimmer.
No, but there's all these policies that continue to get pushed, right? And there's all these things that continue to get pushed. Canada Proud says Trudeau Liberal Justice Minister Arif Varini posts a graphic claiming that his party has decreased auto thefts in Canada by 17%, complains that Conservatives want to throw everyone who steals cars in jail. Huh. Yeah, that'd be good. Like, could we do that? And it's interesting, if you increase auto theft by hundreds of percentages, and then you decrease it by 17% from that high, That's not a win, right? But they're trying to frame it as a win. Oh, we decreased it by 17%. Don't you see? We started arresting people now. Holly Doan says federal Phoenix pay system failure has now cost taxpayers $3.7 billion with a B. New figure was disclosed in a briefing note from Public Service and Procurement Office. So that's interesting. That's a lot of money. Phoenix pays a failure. They knew it was a failure. If you were a regular business and you couldn't figure out payroll, you wouldn't last very long. People would say, can you pay me right? And you'd be like, oh yeah, for sure. I'll definitely get that right. And then years later, after you spend billions of dollars on a failed payroll system, you still don't have it right. You probably aren't around anymore, right? Except this is the government. So I guess you can buy a faulty payment system and then utilize it for years and years and years. And the only consequence is just money leaks out everywhere. Aw shucks, right? Taxpayer money. Darn. Right? And they're not doing a damn thing to fix it, so I guess they don't care that much. Here's Payman, and he says, now the government is, this is electioneering. This is, we're in an election year now-ish, right? So it'll be by October 25. So we're knocking on the door of an election year. How's that? And everybody's kind of in election mode anyway. Everybody is campaigning. I think that Justin Trudeau was worried his government is going to fall at any minute. And he's right to be worried that his government is going to fall at any minute. Look at how Biden's imploding. And so there's all sorts of things happening with regards to elections. And Payman says, now the government is bringing in Mark Carney to sell this whole unpopular carbon tax. The idea that they just have to sell this correctly, that they just have to find the right communication medium, right? The right thing that you buy into. You're like, yes, we definitely have to do this because this action is better than the alternative. They're hoping that they can find that magical bit of rhetoric to convince you. And they think that Mark Carney can do that. And I don't think it's possible, but what they'll do is they'll transform the carbon tax into some other tax, into some other kind of thing. And then they'll try and get buy-in from that. Anyway, this is this guy talking about Mark Carney being parachuted in because Justin Trudeau thinks he's a fixer. And he says, I don't think it's going to work, but that's what they're going to do. Here we go.
He's going to find people to blame for his failures. Who's he blaming? Chrystia Freeland, trying to convince Mark Carney to join them. And they see him as a fixer, the guy who can come in, sell the carbon tax, which is really what this is all about. So much of the opposition to Trudeau is an opposition to this green agenda of his, which has been so economically devastating to so many Canadians. So you bring a guy like Carney, who's come as another elitist, another guy who never has to worry about going to the grocery store and spending more than he has on tomatoes or fish or something else to feed his family. No, Mark Carney doesn't have to worry about that. None of those people around Trudeau have to worry about that. But they need a guy who can put a fresh coat of paint on that government. And I guess they see him as that person. Now, whether or not he wants to do it, well, that's another matter altogether. But it tells you a lot about these people, that they're trying to blame Chrystia Freeland, who by the way, I am no fan of. I don't care. I mean, good, to me, she deserves it. But stick it to her. Try to bring in Carney and somehow hope that is the magic elixir that elevates Justin Trudeau to victory once again. I don't think it'll work, but he's certainly going to give it a shot. He's good.
It seems like it. It seems like that. Yeah. It seems like the only thing we need to do is change the messaging around fiscal policy. And the way to do that, new finance minister, right? Bam, reset button. Stephen Guilbeault is attacking Pierre Poilievre. Everybody's attacking Pierre Poilievre. He says, when you look back at his record, it's wild the things that he has said and supported, right? He wanted to get vaccines in arms faster. He supports all of these foreign wars. He wants to send money to Ukraine. I don't want to send a dime to Ukraine. Let's focus on Canada. So I agree. Time for a change. No more uniparty. How about that? People don't like who I'm supporting, right? I think that's super funny. People are telling me, oh, supporting the PPC is supporting Justin Trudeau. And again, these arguments don't, like, we're the people who try and flame PPC supporters or shame them or whatever in order to get them to vote for CPC have missed the whole point. Like, nobody is talking about the issues that we need to solve Canada. Nobody. And it's not likely to be solved. I don't think there's a political solution at this point in time, because the problems are bigger than Canada. I think the leaders are outside of Canada. I think the only way to change what's going on is to pretty much jail everybody who is in the bureaucracy and in government at this point in time. Have a caretaker government whose only job is to stop the bleeding and restore the elections to actually being elections that are reliable, and then hold a proper election. Like, that's the short answer, the short version to a restoration. But like, that's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So we're going to have a uniparty, and then we're going to have a uniparty, just like what's happening to England right now. Like, they thought if they got rid of the Conservatives and brought in the other party, Labour, they'd have something different. And Labour's gone pedal to the metal worse than what Conservatives were doing, right? Like, so I think that is a good predictor of what's Canada's going to get. And I hope I'm wrong, but Pablo Rodriguez is attacking Pierre Poilievre as well. He says Pierre Poilievre refuses to say what he'd do and what he'd cut if he was in power, but his record speaks for itself. And I said, can he live stream? Each cut would be a celebration. It would be a Canadian Mardi Gras. And here's, I think this is Malaya. Malaya is getting rid of all of the ministries. Sorry, he's yelling in Spanish. But yeah, he's right. Gone. Ministry of Culture, gone. He said, like, this is the beginning, like just the beginning. Ministry of Climate Change, gone. Ministry of Gender and Diversity, gone. See you later, right? Ministry of Public Works. Okay, well, maybe you need Public Works. But still, maybe it's duplicated, right? Like, there's a lot of, how many directors of education do you need in Ontario? Right? Really. Here's Jerry, and he's sharing what Jagmeet Singh says, and Son of a Bench has the reporter asking, you complain a lot about the Liberal Party. Are you willing to put your agreement up for an election? And Jagmeet Singh doesn't really want to do that, right? So here's...
Well, either way, we're ready. We're getting close to an election. Election is scheduled for the by law election date is going to be in 2025. So either way, we're close to an election. We want people to know the choice. That choice is really important. We'll be ready to find an election whenever that happens. And we want people to know what their choices are. Well, either way, we're...
I don't know that they're ready for an election. Like, how much their fundraising has been lagging for years. Like, in the 2019 and 21 elections, there were concerns that the party couldn't fund the election campaigns because, and they had to mortgage a couple of the properties that the NDP used to own outright, right? And so they had to go into debt in order to fight the elections. And I don't know what their financial situation is right now, but from that, has it improved really after tying themselves to the Liberals? Maybe the Liberals are donating. Christia Freeland says, our government is fighting to protect Canadian workers from unfair trade practices. Having unions at the table helps us do just that. No. We will always defend Canadian jobs, thanks to the Labour leaders who sat down and shared their insights today. Paul Mitchell says, you froze bank accounts of workers who donated to the Freedom Convoy. I don't believe you have legitimate concerns with unfair practices. Also, they create laws that stack the deck against Canadian workers in favor of foreign workers. I don't think that they're interested at all in fair labor practices. At all, right? Like, not even a tiny little bit. Pierre Poilievre, again, is talking about foreign situations. Do you remember Juan Guaido? He was the G7 selected leader of Venezuela. And they said, that Maduro guy, he's not really the leader anymore. Juan Guaido is, they're the government in exile. And we're going to restore Juan Guaido and the real government of Venezuela. Bingo, bango, bongo. That's what they said. And less the bingo, bango, bongo. But remember all that? And now, Juan Guaido who? Guaido? I don't know who that is, right? Next, Pierre Poilievre says the world must watch socialist dictator Maduro. He would love to cheat or outright kill his real Democratic rival, Maria Corina Machado, before the July 28th election. He should be hammered with crippling sanctions and more if he does either. Let the people vote for freedom. And so, like, there's more than meets the eye here. If Maria is the G7-backed selected person, and there's a whole lot more going on than meets the eye, I think, right? And so it's very, very interesting. So I don't know how it's all going to play out, but it seems like Pierre Poilievre is aligning himself with the Uniparty but kind of hiding that through selectively campaigning for different people and freedom, but leaving a bit of the context out. Really, it's very interesting. Let's talk about the ongoing invasion in Canada and the West. Riley says Maclean's released an entire issue about the Trudeau government's disastrous immigration policy. Just a couple of years ago, the mainstream shunned this issue. Immigration restriction is rising. Let's keep the pressure up. So Maclean says 41 million Canadians, how we got to 41 million. And Plato says almost 1.3 million immigrants and non-permanent residents arrived in Canada last year, intensifying inflation and the housing crisis and undermining Canadians' traditional support for immigration. Joe Oliver, finance minister from the Harper government, writes in the Financial Post, right? So interesting stuff. Doug Ford, though, super excited about all the growth. This is Doug Ford. Listen to the framing. Realistically, this is not good for anybody, really, but Doug Ford is framing it as nothing but positive. Here we go.
Friends, as everyone in this room knows, this region is growing at a rapid pace. Matter of fact, not just this region, Ontario is the fastest growing region in North America, bar none. And I'll give you one example. When you talk to the two great governors, one from Florida and Texas, they love saying, we're the fastest growing state in the U.S. And yes, they're the fastest growing states. They bring in 1,000 people a day. So that's 365,000 each state. Last year, we brought in over 800,000 people. So we're bringing more people than both Texas and Florida combined. We're over 16 million people. We'll surpass New York State in probably another 5-6 years. From Woolwich to Cambridge, from Wellesley to North Dumfries, we're seeing more and more families establishing roots, local companies expanding, and new businesses setting up shop.
Tent cities and long lines at food banks and people unable to get service because there's too many people here and not enough service to go around, shelters full of foreigners. Why is this seen as a net positive? Table Salt says, it's official. Canada now has the second worst housing affordability in the world. OECD housing prices to income 2023, and we're the unnamed one at the end here. So, oh no, we're the worst one here. This is, I guess this one's Bulgaria, and we're the worst one here. But she said it was unnamed, second last, I guess she said. The price to income ratio is the nominal house price index divided by the nominal disposable income per head and can be considered as a measure of affordability. So it is the data. Oh, she says the data point is labeled at the top of the bars on the left side if you can't find it. So there we go. I don't know why it's labeled up there and not as part of the list at the bottom here, but this is Canada's line. So it is second worst. Not good. Not good. Steve says fastest growing cities in North America by number of people added are all in Canada. This is human quantitative easing, right? So Toronto had 125,000 people, almost 126,000 people in 2023. In 2022, 67,000. Calgary, 38,000 in 2022, 86,000 in 23. Montreal, 18,000, 81,000 in 23. Edmonton in 22, 22,000. In 23, 55,000. It's ramping up. They're doubling, right? Or more. And so that's wild, right? That's incredible. And we don't have the capacity to just pay for these people. Yesterday, I showed you a British woman being arrested in Leeds. I think it was Leeds. For standing out and protecting her property from the protesters or from the people who are in the streets. Here's another guy being arrested for doing the same. Sorry, that was too loud. I'll turn it down.
Go home! Go home! Wait the place, people! I've had enough! You've got your problems! Work it out with your leaders! Go home! No, get off me!
Oh my God, it's kicking off. Share the live.
So that's what the police are going to do if you start trying to defend your home from invaders paid for by the government. I wish it weren't so. Rex says every word out of every liberal's mouth is a lie. National Post says foreign student permits are already outpacing 2023's number. So again, not surprising whatsoever. And because they say one thing, but their ideology drives them to do something else, right? Joe says Trudeau fails to deal with out-of-control immigration, student permit, asylum, and other streams up despite claims of coming caps. Yeah, so all of the immigration streams are up despite promises to the contrary. How's that going to work out? It's going to work out because they'll claim some emergency and then continue governing with no election or something to that effect. I'm waiting for that for 2024 because it seems like they'll do anything to keep Trump out, including trying to kill him. Bernie says, Ireland, I think it's important to understand the scale of taxpayer-funded migrant accommodation being installed across all of Ireland, camps built on agricultural land, sites of importance, and in converted buildings, all against the will of the majority. EU Migrant Pact demands it. And so they've built these container homes, these little, they look like module homes, and all on agricultural land. They want to force people together and then starve them. Fun. See, you can see this big camp here on farmland, beside farmland. And you drive by and you notice this, and what do you do? How do you fight this? Because if you go and say, "Oi, you out now," right? They'll come and arrest you, right? So how do you reasonably fight back against this? Tax revolt? I don't have any other suggestions at this point in time. Leeds Amazon have installed new toilets for their British employees. Starts with squat toilets and ends with morning prayer bellowing out across towns, all living under Sharia law. This is not hyperbole. Here we go. Squat toilet. That's not good. That's bad, right? That's not good. Here is Britain first. How much more can Britain take? Enough is enough. Stop immigration. Start deportations. Yeah, I think failure to deport people who are destroying your culture on purpose is surrender. Melissa says police block the Falls Avenue, which leads to the Rainbow Bridge, the Canadian-U.S. border, because of the pro-Palestinian group. So there you go. Pretty wild stuff happening on the streets of Niagara Falls. Very touristy, except all the police and that huge police presence. So that's not good either, right? Really, it isn't. Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful